time we would have presentations and recognitions, but tonight we don't have any. So we will now move on to oral communications. Now, every week when we get to oral communications, I read the same thing, and I want to try to stop and pick it apart, because I got a lot of feedback in the last week that they felt that at the last council meeting, there was a lot of public coming to the mic, and they didn't get much back. And if you, what I'd like you to know is that the procedure is that by law, we are not allowed to. So therefore, I want everyone to understand the procedure. And what the procedure is you come to us on things that are agendized or not agendized. If they are not agendized, we cannot by law talk about them or discuss them. So what I would like to ask you to do is to understand that we do hear you. We not only hear you, we're writing down what you have to say, and we take it back to the staff and bring it forward to another council meeting if that's what's needed. So I just want you to know that we're not sitting up here not responding to you. We are trying to obey the law. So now I'm going to go ahead and read to you what I have here from the attorney, because I think I read it every time and it probably is just going by and not being heard. At this time, members of the public may address the council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. So obviously that means that you can't talk to me about something at the federal level or the international level. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action, and please notice the discuss or take action on any items not on the agenda unless authorized by law. Matters not on the agenda may, at the council's discretion, be referred to the city manager and placed on a future agenda. Those members of the public wishing to speak are asked to come forward to the microphone and state their name for the record. All speakers will be limited to a period of 5 minutes. Any documents for review should be presented to the city clerk for distribution. Is there anyone that would like to come and speak?
Good evening, Patty Campbell, College Park East. I would like to address the item on the agenda this evening on the city clerk. We made it through the election. Now we will have an appointed city clerk, which is the way it should be in a town this size. But now you have to decide whether the city clerk will report to the city council or to the city manager. In order to preserve the independence of that office, I strongly urge you to have the city clerk report to the city council. You guys run the city. You hire the city manager to take care of the day-to-day details. You hire the city attorney, whose job is really to keep you guys out of trouble. But now we have the city clerk, and I would respectfully request that the city clerk come under your auspices. If you guys need a document, you should be able to go straight to the city clerk and not have to go through the city manager. It preserves the independence of that office, and that's what I'm really concerned about. So I would really request that you would do that. When Paul mentioned at the last meeting about the city of Bell, he was right on, because the city clerk worked for the city manager, and it was do as he said or lose his job or lose the job. And so the city clerk broke the law to keep her job. That situation gets lessened when you have 5 people to report to versus 1. And so, it's not to say that over time we're not going to get a bad city manager. Unfortunately, we've had them. Again, I would request that the city clerk report to the city council, that you guys do the hiring and have the oversight of that office. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If you would like to speak, could you please form a line so that we can all get through quickly? Yes.
Yeah, my name is Jim Bicchetti. I'm from Leisure World, and I'm following up on my presentation at the last meeting regarding the Bay Theater. Mm-hmm. And I gave you a handout subsequently, and now the council members have that. And this article that I gave you about new uses for old theaters is about 14 years old, but I think it's as relevant today as it was then. It's an ongoing issue, and many communities have had to deal with it. The Bay Theater Foundation, I think, took the approach, and I'm not a member of that organization, by the way, although I do know a few people in it, tried to do, I think, what people did with the Art Theater in Long Beach. In 2007, it was actually bought by the citizens of the Belmont Heights section of Long Beach. Subsequently, after that purchase, it was resold by the architect who redesigned the property and his businesswoman wife, in addition to the previous operator, and now it's being operated as a nonprofit. And the community has continued to support it. When they needed a new digital projector in 2013, the community coughed up about $50,000 for that item. For whatever reason, that level of support for the Bay Theater is not here in Seal Beach. I don't know exactly why, but every community, I guess, has a different approach to dealing with this issue, as the article points out. And some of these approaches, I think, are really subpar. For example, the Old Holiday Theater in Bellflower, on Bellflower Boulevard, that theater is now a church. The Belmont Theater in Belmont Shore is now a gym. And sometimes they are redeveloped as retail space, which I don't think, is a totally good solution for a lot of places, including Seal Beach. I think that the best solution for Seal would be to redevelop the property in part as a community center where you could have theatrical productions and movies, and I think maybe you could take maybe a half to a quarter of that space and do it. And a model for that might be what you have over on Hanaheim Street in Long Beach, where that theater has a main stage and a small theater upstairs, which can seat, maybe 100, 150 people. I've been there a number of times. And you could have musical performances, lectures, and you could also have the ability to show movies there. That has been done, where you have had combined movie theater and playhouses. And that has been done successfully in a number of communities. And I did the internet research on it. And of course, it's going to cost money to do that. And the property, once it's redeveloped here, I think will pay for itself. You have 2 residential units on the property. You could probably put a retail space or 2 in there in addition, and then have enough room for a community center, which could have various kinds of theatrical productions, movies, etc., that would bring people into the downtown area during the entire week, even like, say, Monday through Thursday, when the downtown area is probably not that busy. But on the weekends, then I think something has to be figured out with regard to parking. And I think what probably should happen is that a committee should be set up of members of the city government, the community, and the Chamber of Commerce, and just explore the issue in depth and come to some conclusions, and then go forward from there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ann Tuller, 209 Electric Avenue. Thank you for your service. For the past few weeks, citizens in Seal Beach are hearing here at the council and reading in the Sun that Dr. Goldberg has cost the city tens of thousands of dollars. As a realtor in this city, I very often am at City Hall asking about permits and codes and issues related to real estate. How much am I costing the city? If Robert Goldberg is costing the city, then I am costing the city too. It's my understanding that the people here, the city manager, the finance person, are paid for by our tax dollars. And the questions that are asked by Dr. Goldberg or me are part of their salary. That's part of their job. So where is this $10,000 coming from? It frightens people. And I think it's a gross misrepresentation of what is what exists. I mean, you people are doing your jobs. So I think we just have to be very careful about bandying about those kind of figures, because I don't think they're fact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. Robert Goldberg, Seal Beach. I think we need to continue the conversation that we started at the last meeting of the Council. I appreciate the efforts that the Council has made to have staff address many of the questions that were raised by the City Manager's vacation to Alaska with a consultant. I also want to thank the Mayor for her statement regarding the importance of avoiding the appearance of conflict of interest. I agree with her that it is critically important for people not to lose faith in their local government. However, myself and many others strongly believe that more needs to be done to accomplish this goal. Tightening the Council's control over contracting authority, specifically reducing the $28,800 threshold for Council approval, would be a major step in the right direction. If the need for this was not apparent to the Council from the last meeting, I ask that you consider a set of 3 contracts that were used by the city to plan, direct, and execute a communication and outreach campaign regarding the ballot measures DD and EE during the last election. While none of these contracts exceeded the $28,800 threshold for council approval, they resulted in a combined expenditure of over $66,000 for a campaign that was never discussed at a public meeting. The first of these contracts was given to the Lou Edwards Group in April 2014 for $27,750. According to their website, this consultant specializes in running campaigns on local measures for municipalities. Their contract included various campaign-related tasks, such as providing input to the city manager on staff reports, anecdotal input to the city attorney on voter handbook materials, and conceiving, quote, communication outreach, and quote, mailings. The cost for printing and postage of these mailings was not included in this contract. The second contract was given to the consulting firm FM3 in June for $22,850 to do a, quote, utility users tax ballot measure issue survey, end quote. FM3 proceeded to survey 300 residents asking how they would vote on simulated ballot language and how various optional provisions, including a tax rate cut, would affect approval. The third contract was also made to the Lou Edwards Group in September for $16,000 to pay for printing and postage for 2 mailers. The first of these was sent to the residents citywide around October 8th, and the second was sent out several weeks later. The public had no idea that the city was spending tens of thousands of dollars on a ballot measure campaign until these mailers arrived. As I said before, the city's intention to spend a total of $66,000 for this purpose was never agendized for discussion at an open council meeting. It was also not discussed during budget workshops or hearings. Neither of the 2 consultants were mentioned anywhere in the adopted budgets for this fiscal year or the prior one. As a result, taxpayers never had the opportunity to question the appropriateness of this spending. If these contracts had been agendized, I think many would have done so. The first contract in April would have raised many questions regarding whether a communication and outreach campaign was necessary to begin with. The second contract for the opinion survey would have been presented at the June 9th council meeting, the same day that the budget was adopted, with only a $21,000 surplus. Given this context, would the public have supported spending an even larger sum on a ballot measure survey? The third contract for mailers would have been presented to the public in September, in the midst of a considerable public debate regarding the city's proposal to make the city clerk an appointed position. This was Measure EE. Opponents of this change could have rightly demanded to see the wording of these mailers before they were sent out. The lack of transparency regarding these three contracts should not have occurred and diminishes the public's faith in government. To restore this, changes are necessary, including reducing the threshold that requires council approval to the range of, say, $10,000 to $15,000. I would expect that this modest proposal would not be burdensome to staff, nor impede the operations of the city. From my review of current payments to vendors, I would guess that no more than 10 additional contracts per year would require council approval. Therefore, I ask the council tonight to agendize a future discussion of this proposal, as well as other ideas that would tighten fiscal controls, increase transparency, and help restore the public's faith in their local government. Thank you.
Scott Newton, Seal Beach Lions Club. Madam Mayor, council, staff, and citizens. I'm here to report, give an update on our LAG project. LAG is Lions Against Graffiti. Sean Crumby came to us a few years ago and said, we have a problem with graffiti on public property. And we as a city, we really can't deal with that quick enough for legal reasons. Can you help? Well, that was just a call to action for the Lions. And from that moment on, our LAG team started, and we started this program where we immediately, for the first 6 months, it was all about cleaning up old graffiti. And once you get to see it, and you get to know it, and you understand it, you wouldn't believe how many places have tags, bombs, pieces, slappers, and all these other things we've learned over time. So in the first 6 months, we cleaned up 1,800 tags. And quite frankly, then we really didn't keep as much track of how many we were doing because it just wasn't that relevant. But each year we do keep a tally, and in 2014 it was 637. Now I know it's much more than that because we give members these graffiti wipes where it's just a one-time deal and nobody records those, but it's probably 800 or 900. But the bottom line is that I think we have a cleaner city. It's good for our environment, and by doing this, it keeps those who like to tag and gang members away from our community because they see whenever they do it, it's gone immediately. Now, in the last year, I think it was 45 of our members participated. And in that, and then we had 4 major projects besides regularly looking at certain areas we know are vulnerable or responding to citizens and an email that we have. We did the river jetty. That's a big one. Quite frankly, we did the part facing Seal Beach. Not our side facing them, their side facing us. San Gabriel River Bike Path, we do it before the run every year and clean it all up. We go up to College Park East where the nursery is, and they got containers along the riverbed, and we clean all those up in the big culvert over there. And then finally the State Lands property where the fishermen are at First and PCH. Those are our 4 projects a year, and those are kind of fun because we usually get 30 or 40 members out there, and afterwards we'll have a barbecue or something. Ray Longoria, he's probably watching tonight. He's our chairman, and he's often seen around town in his golf cart. He always keeps supplies with him. There are 12 official members that keep supplies in their car, and they're the ones who get the emails. It's graffiti removal at sealbeachlions.org, and it's in the paper often. It's on our website. If anybody has an issue with graffiti and you send us an email, 12 people get the email, and trust me, we're very competitive. We are same-day cleanup, and we immediately react. And if it's a bigger project, we'll have to get several people out there, and we like the big projects too.
Scott, could you give the email again?
What's that?
Give the email again.
Graffiti removal at sealbeachlions.org. Or you can call any one of the Lions. Since the program began, we've really seen graffiti reduced, specifically in Old Town, which is where we've had the most of it. On the outskirts of Seal Beach, we're starting to expand outside of Seal Beach because, quite frankly, we don't have enough to clean up. So we're oftentimes in Long Beach along the edges. But it's a great program for us. It involves a lot of members. We think we're doing something good for the community. We love to react quickly. Oftentimes, we've identified what is considered gang graffiti, and we will tell the police department when we see those, take pictures and send it to them. And it's something that it wouldn't have happened without a partnership with the city. Okay, and it's from the very top to our people in public works who we work with regularly to make this program work. And I think one of the great things in this town is the relationship between city staff and our service organizations and the chamber and Run Seal Beach and others who really make this a beautiful community, because it's that partnership that makes it a great place. So thank you to the city of Seal Beach and staff in particular for helping us help the community be cleaner and graffiti free. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Susan Perel, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I wanted to follow up on Dr. Goldberg's suggestions, and really also follow up on Councilman Miller's suggestion last week on the subject that even though, as Mayor Deaton said, we have a large city to run, and City Council only meets every 2 weeks, we need to have some spending authority with the city manager to keep things running. So there's this balance between looking at every expenditure and having it go before public review and running our city efficiently. So I think Councilman Miller brought up, possibly lowering that spending authority a bit. For maybe we could apply that to non-routine things, like lobbying or polling or things that really do involve public opinion and public concern, not just filling a pothole or something like that. And also, I think, Councilman Miller, you brought up the prospect of potential to have a list of expenditures that are under the spending authority, if that would be, maybe $20,000 or $10,000, whatever the new authority might be that you'd propose. But for those things that are under that limit, maybe just the council could review those twice a year. And I thought it was a really good suggestion, just to kind of know what's going on and have everybody be accountable. And it's not, I don't want to seem like everyone's picking on the city manager. It's really to protect the city manager as well. I mean, these requests that the city manager gets to do polling or whatever, it could have been a request by someone in the city council, and it just kind of protects everyone and makes everyone's actions and intentions transparent, which I think would be great. So thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Council, and thank you, staff. I feel very lucky and fortunate and happy to live in a small town where I have access to city government, and I know probably I'll be many of you on a first-name basis. I would like to support some kind of a change in the process for laying out the contracts. I would like to see some of these contracts appear on the consent calendar. And one of the arguments against doing this is that it causes more slowdown in the workings of government. But I think what's happened with the contracts regarding the election for city clerk and for the utility tax, it's the reaction that's come out has probably created more work for the council and for the staff than was saved by not putting this out in the daylight and sunshining it. So I would like to see some change in the process as suggested by Susan and Robert, so that citizens are more aware of what the council is doing, and we see what's going on in the budget. And I think your job will be simpler too when the citizens know more clearly what's going on.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Credell, and I'm the head of the Merchandise Committee with my co-chairman, Carla, who's in Hawaii. And this is our bag that we're selling, our grocery bag that we're all going to have to use after July 1, when Vons can't give us plastic anymore. And we just got this last Thursday, and this is our new shirt. The one I'm wearing, we've been selling since November, and which is going really, really well. And we're getting a lot of ads in the Neighborhood Watch. And Carla puts in, if you want to contact me, you have to go telephone. My youngest son bought me an iPhone, but I'm not really good on it yet. I have my flip phone still. But if you want anything, or I have everything in my garage, and you can buy these at Saturday from 9 to 2, and Sunday 10 till 2, and we weren't there on Super Bowl, and we're not there in the rain. We have a new, and I really am pleased that our chief allowed us to put our 2 tables and our pop-up tent, because we're older and we can't sit in the sun all day. So we have a pop-up, and he allows us to put the small one in the volunteer office, and they're so nice to us. In fact, they're our best customers. All of our volunteers there have got, and then the chief on Sunday came and brought his dear little 3 kids and bought sweatshirts. So it really is a family thing there, and we feel lucky to be there because we have kind of a way that people come from all over the country. They're complaining about the snow in their parks, and they're so happy to be there, and they want to know all about it. And we have a form that Mark Popesco has of all our different events this year, and we pass those out. And then they'll ask, which is the best place for kids on the place, or hamburgers, and the new restaurant right between Bogart's and El Burrito is fantastic. We all have tried that. And we're right there. And the nicest thing, we don't do email on the shirts and that, because we want our people to come down and shop and peruse Main Street. So we're there, and we're doing well, but we'd like to see some of the council come down and get some of our wares. And we have sizes from extra small to 3X. So, and our prices are good. Our T-shirts, this T-shirt is $10. This one now is $15 because it costs a lot more with the different colors. But we go up to 3X on everything. We have hats, they're $15. We have really nice polo shirts that are embroidered. They're really nice, and they're $30. We have hoodies, we have sweatshirts, we have decals that are the same logo. One is sticky, and that's $2. Our other decal is the rub-on that's clingy, that doesn't make a mess, that's $3. So we have all kinds of good things. We have note cards that Elizabeth has made that are just beautiful. And there are 6 different designs of all Old Seal Beach. So we have the whole thing. So if you just come, and if you need anything for Valentine's Day, think of us. That's my commercial. I'm sorry. My other reason I'm here, we usually have a town hall type meeting in our government. What happened? I would like to know, why was it so important to spend all that money to appoint the city clerk? We were never given that. I mean, I would like to hear more on that. That's my other hat.
Okay.
Hey there, Laura Ellsworth, Scott Weir. We're here with Centennial, and we started setting out at the pier for the brick program, and we just want to let you know orders are racing in. This is going to be a great campaign, and what you can't wear in a Centennial, you can put on a brick, and we'd be happy to get that for you, but it's going really well, so I just want to report that.
Thank you.
Can you order online?
Yes, yeah, so now it's available through the rec guide to order the bricks online, which is nice. You'll be able to use a credit card. And it's on the website now, so and it's up and running, which is sealbeach100.com. Okay. So visit it, and yeah, it's going great.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for that.
Joyce Parquet, Old Town Seal Beach. And the other thing about the city of Bell was that the city council made a lot of money, and some of them were indicted too, because they knew what was going on in the city. But yes, and the other thing is the article in the paper by the treasurer. There are a lot of people in town I think I've been coming down since 2000. A lot of people in town think that they can do just as good a job as he can or all the city managers we've had. How many of them have been crooks? There are a lot of people in town that think they can do the same job. How many contracts do we have to give out to give bids on everything? So you're back to the money we spent without, did you know about it, Mayor?
Yes, I did.
You knew about this?
Yes, I
And
did.
you didn't tell anybody?
Keep going. Your time is going.
Dear neighbor, because I figured that came from you. Dear neighbor.
Now, wait a minute. I didn't write it. I knew about it.
Yeah. Well, all of your things were dear neighbor. Dear neighbor, the city is writing to inform you about Measure D and E. Sincerely, Jill R. Ingram, City Manager. Dear neighbor, that's a bunch of, you're not my neighbor. You came here to do a job. You haven't done the job. And it's too late now. We don't have any trust in you. And you wanted to be up on the Coastal Commission. You didn't get it, so you're coming down here to Dear Neighbor. Dear Neighbor. And what you put on there was just so insane. It takes all of our property tax and all of our utilities tax to pay for the public police department and the fire department. So where does that leave us? And you're getting more money from sales tax, and you're getting more money from property tax now. But this dear neighbor is really illegal, I think. And I want the money back. Just like the previous treasurer we had about 6 years ago. He stole over $300,000 from us. I think we got the money back and he went to jail. But when you do something where people don't trust you anymore, you can't rebuild that back. We've lost the trust in you. I want the money back. I want you gone, dear neighbor. Dear neighbor. Sincerely, Jill Ingram, R. Ingram, City Manager.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So here's the other one. We got two of them. $66,000. We want the money back. We got the money back from the other treasurer that stole the money. And then we got the other guy that was here before you who gave his friends all kinds of contracts for the fire station up there, for the pension, the bond of pension. Enough is enough. If you can't be transparent, and the one thing about you, Attorney Flowers, is you didn't sign that contract to get the money for this. Thank you. But guess who it was? The other one that we left. But, I mean, this is nonsense. We're adults down here. We're paying the bills. This is nonsense. I am continually going to talk about this. This is nonsense. It's like the city of Bell, and how far are we going to go? There's no trust in you anymore, and I think you should go. And I want the money back. It was not yours to do as you please. And it doesn't give the facts about Measure E and Measure D. And guess what's coming next on Measure D? The same thing I brought up before the election. It's the internet. It's coming. And how many times I've been talking about transparency and ethics. I took his ethics class. Nobody else took it. I've taken it a couple times. He always told you when you're on the edge, be careful. The transparency is gone for the city manager. I don't trust her. I know a lot of people who don't trust her, and I want the money back, and I want somebody new down here. We only keep city managers, 4 or 5 years anyway. It's time for her to go. I asked for all kinds of audits. And what did I get? You had an audit done on the water bill, and it came back, it wasn't really an audit, and you had it in June. This is hiding things that the taxpayers need to know. It wasn't even an audit.
1 minute.
1 minute. Let's see. Should I go back to Dear Neighbor? Dear Neighbor, it's not correct. It's not correct. A city manager shouldn't be doing that. You have to go.
I need my glasses. Good evening. My name's Rosie Ritchie, and I'm the director of the Miss Seal Beach pageant. As a director, it's been my goal to create an organization with the Miss Seal Beach pageant that encourages our young women to represent with style and grace, learn to properly speak amongst crowds, but most importantly, dream big, set high goals, and never stop reaching for the stars. The Miss Seal Beach organization each month meets, reviewing upcoming events. We have a Toastmaster exercise, and we invite a powerful woman who has made an impact in the community through business or community service. Our city manager, Jill Ingram, took the time to visit one of our meetings where she spoke with 12 wide-eyed young future leaders and shared her journey through college, raising her son, but most importantly, never giving up. She spent the evening answering questions from both our young women and their parents. She's a true inspiration to our organization, and to this day, when the girls speak of memorable times, it's always the meeting with Jill Ingram that they speak of. In my short time as director, I'm proud to say that each ambassador has graduated from high school, and they've moved forward pursuing education. Our Joy Nepper currently attends Azusa, Jessica Jenkins, Cal State Fullerton, Krista Tamara, Chapman University, and our very own Alexis Bach, Vanguard University. Thank you, Jill, for your support in molding our youth to be great leaders. It's people like you who believe in our young people, our community, and our future. I look forward to seeing all of you at the next pageant, which is going to be held March 1st at 4 o'clock at Los Alamitos High School, and let's continue getting young girls and creating leaders. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Charmin Snow. I live in Old Town, and my only question is, Lou Grant and Associates, I'm curious as to if any of our 5 seated elected officials has used Lou Grant and Associates for their campaigns, either in the past or currently. Just an open question to all 5 of you. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Hi, Paul Yost, Seal Beach. Once again, thank you all for your service. It's obviously a very thankless job, so thank you all for your service. I greatly appreciate it. I'm just here to support the general concept of lowering the amount that the city manager is able to spend, and to please, if one of the 5 council members could agendize that for an actual meeting, that would be wonderful. And I'm also still troubled a little bit by the 2 glossy flyers that went out to every elected person. It just seemed a little strange. It seemed as though the city did have a perspective and did have a desired outcome from that, just in the way that the ballot initiative was written. You know, should the city of Seal Beach have an appointed city clerk? You know, you could even read from that. If all you did was read that ballot, we don't have a city clerk. You know, it just didn't say, or should we have an elected city clerk? It didn't say that. You know, it was written in such a way that I think it got a desired outcome, and I have a problem with that. I don't think that it's really getting the actual public's opinion on what that really should be. And in terms of, you know, who that person should report to, you know, there's a certain diffusion of responsibility when that person reports to 5 people as opposed to one person. And I think it makes it more secure, and it gives people more confidence. So I just would kind of strongly suggest that you do that. And with regard to my comments about the city attorney, it's not that I don't trust the city attorney. It's just that I'm a physician, and I look at a lot of issues like when doctors make mistakes and how you deal with things. And everybody has certain biases when they approach something. And the city attorney, in issues related to the city manager, has a certain bias, and that is that they're the person that's reviewing the contracts. It's kind of like I knew a professional volleyball player who played back before they had referees. And I asked him, I said, you had no referees? I mean, did you call your own nets? He looked at me and he smiled and he said, I didn't net in 3 years. And it's kind of similar. You're asking the city attorney to review their own work product. And I don't think that that's a good idea. So I think that you need someone else from the outside to give you a fresh perspective on what that should be. So once again, thank you all for your service. And I know it's difficult being up there and you get harangued a lot, so thank you again.
Hi, Brian Kyle, Still Beach. Boy, 2 meetings in a row, that's big for me. But I have to come back and say 2 things. I want to say, first of all, I believe what Patty Campbell said about the city clerk, that it should be council. I agree with that. Number 2 is the appreciation of the Still Beach Alliance. They are just so awesome. I've worked with them a lot. In the past, we put up burgers from our restaurant where they've done fundraisers. They jump on things. They're the largest Lions in the state of California. That's a big statement. This is a big state. And they're very good at it. Now, to get down to the other stuff, I'm in business, and I've been in business for 50 years, since I was probably 12 years old, working burgers on Seal Way at Dave's Place and working up and down Main Street since I was a kid. And I do know one thing about business, is that you've got to be able to give your leaders a little bit of leeway. I think we got a great team here. We got clean streets. We got nice sidewalks. We got good paving. I've never, like I said last week, I've never been in the city manager's office. I've never talked to Mr. Flower. I've never been in I've been in the city manager's office, but never with the city manager. I've always wanted an oil consultant in this town because I thought it was great. I think you have to give, it's like when you're in business, there's milestones to a contract. There's 3 maybe stages, there could be 4 stages in contracts. You have to give her some power to negotiate. You can't just take it away and say, sometimes you got to make a decision in business and it's got to be made right there. $28,000 is not a big thing in a city of $30 million or whatever our budget is in here. She got received back for every dollar. We got 93 cents back on these contracts. That's incredible. That's mind-boggling. They should be giving you an award. I just find it very hard to sit there and put handcuffs on a city manager to work. Has to be transparency? Absolutely. But to sit there and try to compare you council people like Bell, where they were making $250,000 and $600,000 a year, I don't think you guys get that. Not the last budget thing I see. So I hope this will bring the temperature down in this town. This is our 100th anniversary. Mr. Goldberg, I have a problem with because I think he's one of those gotcha guys. If he finds a nickel, gotcha. Are you kidding me? In the big picture of things here? You know, he goes on and says you want to look into things, and then I find out 2 weeks ago he already went to the district attorney. Nobody's been around, but he didn't put that transparency on the table. But I just want to say that I think we ought to bring the temperature down here. It's our anniversary of the town. There's a lot of positive things that are going on here. And I just hate this ugliness of coming in on defenseless staff by bullies. They can't talk back to them. And I just consider it bullying. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the oral communications. I would like to please go to the city attorney report.
Nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
City Manager?
Yes, Mayor, I have a couple items tonight. First of all, proud to announce that we have a new Seal Beach Aquatics class that started last week. It's an after-school class program, actually, out of McGaw School to teach kids about many different kinds of aquatic activities while making them safer in and around water. The instructors are teaching our children proper technique and swim strokes, water polo, diving, along with many other aquatic activities, and it's so popular that there's actually a waiting list now because the class is full. So if any of the council or those of you out in the community that are interested, please contact our Marine Safety Chief, Joe Bailey, for additional information on that. And I know Mayor Deaton at OCFA announced last week that they have a potential opportunity for a grant program that would provide free swim lessons for children, so looking forward to see what the outcome of that grant process is. The second thing I'd like to do is ask our Public Works Director, Sean Crumby, to talk about the Westminster Bike Lane project that's about ready to start construction in a few weeks. Sean?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Just a quick announcement. Happy to discuss Westminster Avenue between Seal Beach Boulevard and Bolsa Chica. That section is probably our worst condition street in the whole city. We're happy to announce that we're going to be starting construction on March 2nd to repave and rehabilitate the street. That construction is being done with $1 million grant that the city secured. So happy to say that that's being assisted with grant funds. The project is scheduled to occur over nighttime hours, so all lanes will be open during the day, and it should take about 6 to 8 weeks to complete.
Thank you. Anything
That's
else?
all I have. Thank you.
All right, now we'll go to council comments. Councilman Miller.
Yeah, I have a few comments. First of all, to answer the campaign manager question, which I didn't have to run in 2012, but in 2008 I had the free campaign management services of Patty Campbell. So that was good. With regard to some of the issues have to do because some things are closed session and you can't be told about those things, and it creates a conflict when you only get half the information. You don't really understand the big picture. I'll come back to that. The other part is, last council meeting, I really wasn't trying to set a limit. I was trying to say to get information so we'd know what was happening with those contracts. The next thing I want to mention is, first about Dr. Goldberg. I personally have the highest respect for Dr. Goldberg. I've worked with him since 2008. He came to me when I was being stonewalled by the previous city manager on information about the storm drains and said, I've got information on the storm drains that I can share with you. And I worked with him. And over the years, I've worked with Robert, and some of the things I've brought to this council were based on things he's suggested. And I think any citizen that wants to come and get information, they should. $10,000, we need to streamline the system if that's what it's costing. We need to figure out ways to make it cheaper. And I encourage every citizen that has questions to come and ask and get a freedom of information from the Freedom of Public Information, or whatever it's called. A request for public information. Thank you. I'm sorry. Now, on the other hand, I have the highest respect for our city manager. She's an honest person. If I didn't think she was honest, trust me, I didn't think a previous city manager was honest, and I was after him continuously till he left. And this city manager is honest, in my opinion. The city attorney's given us an opinion. The DA is looking at it. If the DA doesn't come back with anything, then I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know this because I've talked to the city manager in the last few days, and she's looking to trying to go further with transparency than any previous city manager's ever done. And she's developing a list of the contracts she's had in the past. And I still got to look at some of the old wording and see how we can put that into the contracts. And the only thing I can guarantee you is, because I can at least ask for it, and I'm sure the other council would want the same thing, that we will have an agenda on this item. I personally don't think we can do it in a month. I mean, I think the city manager can correct me, but I think we're looking at a big picture. We're looking at contracts. We're looking at wording. And we're going to look at the approval limits. Maybe the limits are okay. Maybe they're not okay. But we'll decide when we really have all the information. And I can say, in my opinion, we don't have all the information at this time. And the city manager and her staff are working hard to get that information now. I kind of felt bad because, again, I have the highest regard for both Dr. Goldberg and for the city manager. So it's a tough situation. And I think the city will be better in the end. I think we'll have a more transparent city than we've ever had. And with that, that's my comments.
Councilwoman Moffett-Labbett. A little bit lighter conversation coming here. This weekend, I had an opportunity to take a trip from Metropolitan Water District. They take a few electeds and others to their water facilities all along California, all the way from Parker Dam to the Sierras. We didn't go that far, but this was from here to Parker Dam, and it was remarkable. It was a remarkable feat what these couple of dozen men had accomplished in getting us water. They knew that our population was going to grow, and they knew that our aquifers weren't adequate to serve all these people, and then we wouldn't have any population here. So they had the foresight and the determination to try and bring water from the Colorado River to Southern California. And I had the opportunity to take a look at their facilities in the south, Copper Canyon Reservoir and several reservoirs on the way back north up to Costa Mesa, and pumping stations and intake valves and reservoirs, and it was pretty remarkable what these people had done in the 30s and how that engineering is still adequate for what they're doing now. We did stop at the Salton Sea for a little bit and got a little history lesson. I used to live in Palm Desert, and I know a lot about the Salton Sea, so if you really want to know anything, I can give you what I know in about a thumbful. I just wanted you to know that it was a remarkable trip. I know it's not open to the public. I wish it were. It would be a really good opportunity for people to see what it takes to get all that water up to us and coming out of our faucet. And I'd like to thank MWD for offering me this opportunity. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Sloan.
Yes, I would like to offer my full support for our city manager. I think she does a great job. One of the things that I think when we judge people, we tend to think, what does this do for me? We get selfish. I'm so glad that I can call her number at any time, and I usually get a phone call right back or within just a few minutes, even on her days off, because sometimes I don't keep track of her days off. Anyway, I just wanted to make that known. I also have a second item I'd like to talk about. Is I had an opportunity to ride out with the police department the other night, and I was so impressed with the way they treated the public. It was so different from other agencies that I've been involved with, and the people there are treated with respect. Even if they've been in trouble with the law, they are treated with respect. And I think we can be proud of our police officers, because somebody has to set the tone for that, and it starts right here at this city council. We need to set the tone on how we want our people treated. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Verapapa.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to echo what Councilman Miller said. We are working hard, and we'll be working hard to show transparency, and we'll be working hard as a team to do that. On another note, I had the honor to be put on the Library Advisory Board. Went to a meeting last week, and it was interesting to note that our budget is basically based on property tax, population, and circulation. And e-books is part of that circulation, so I encourage everyone to go to the library and get e-books and do what you can to get the circulation up, because that also regulates our budget and our operation time. So it's a good thing to know. Thank you.
Very good thing. Thank you. I have a few things I'd like to say. I want to start off because I don't want to ignore it, I want to talk again about what has happened in the last couple of weeks. And part of that was a copy that I had previously announced and intended to keep, and I did keep, and we did have quite a discussion there. And anyone that read The Sun was able to read the quotes from that. There was a missing quote. The missing quote was that there was a woman who came in to the coffee, and she said, I just came because I've been asking to have a certain office building cleaned up because we've had so many transients, and our police department did it, and I came down here to say thank you. You didn't read that in The Sun. So I want you to know that it was, I want to thank our police department for it. And I had the opportunity to have a presentation by Officer Gray, who was involved in that, and they made 94 visits to clean it up. So there are really positive things happening even when we get overwhelmed with the negative. Secondly, I would like to also thank Councilman Miller for his comments. I think that it's important to give our city manager time to take in all of what's being said and have time to come back to us with what she looks as remedies. She has been an excellent city manager. She has this town running better than it has ever run. We have an excellent staff, a responsive staff, and I think we owe her the time. Obviously, there was an appearance that no one liked. She understands that. She apologized in the newspaper, and I think it's important to now let her spend some time and figure out how to make this a better town as a result and not keep harping on it. With that, I would like to also say there is great hope for the next generation. The Youth Center in Los Alamitos, I was privileged to go to their formal at the Marina Center, and I said, you've got to be kidding. I'm going to a formal in the Marina Center. It was like a gymnasium that they had made into prom night, and it was just beautiful. They did a fabulous job, and those kids were just amazing kids. And the one that stands out in my mind is the girl that raised all the money after the Philippine hurricane, bought her own ticket, and took money down there and bought new fishing boats for the fishermen that had lost their boats, and she's a high school student. So I was just blown away by that. So it gave me great hope. And finally, swim lessons prevent drowning. So thank you for the new class. I'm looking forward to see what the grant's going to do. And with that, we will move on with our meeting. And thank you all again for coming. It may seem a thankless task to come out and talk to us, but we are listening and we are notating, so thank you. So at this time, I would like to move on to council items, and we will begin with item A, the city clerk appointment. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll be giving the staff report for this item. This concerns the appointment of the city clerk. As you will recall, in November of last year, the voters approved Measure EE, which amended the city charter to allow for the appointment rather than direct election of a city clerk. I wasn't planning on addressing this next point, but since it was raised during oral communications and falls within this agenda subject, go ahead.
Oh, could I interrupt you for just a minute?
Yes.
I don't even know who Lou whatever his name is. I always run my own campaigns. So that's it. Go ahead.
There was a question about the language of the of Measure EE, and I just wanted to remind the council and let the public know that this is language that is actually specifically specified in the government code, particular to that office. There is not language governing every single ballot measure, but in this case, there is clear language in the government code that says the question must be stated as, shall the city clerk be appointed? Mm-hmm. And that's it. So that is the language we use. It wasn't a chance to mislead. We were merely complying with state law in that regard. So just wanted to put that out there so people can understand.
Could I make a comment on that? I think that I've been thinking, and maybe my fellow council members might think this is a good idea, that we might have a class on process. Because one of the things I find is that people ask me, well, why don't you do this? Well, state law prohibits it. And I don't think that people understand how many places that our hands are tied. So it might be an interesting thing to offer. You know, I know we offer the ethics class, but just a class in how does this agenda run? Why is it that we can't have a discussion when something urgent is brought up? Just an idea. I don't know if people would be interested in coming, but it's one idea that I did have. And what do you think of that?
I think the possible range of topics is so large. Places where we're stopped by state law from exercising our full local authority. Maybe something more targeted. The issue of the agenda requirements and open meetings is already covered as part of the AB 1234 training, which is typically done as a public meeting. So
that's the ethics training.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's perhaps something I can discuss with the city manager about how to develop it and execute, because this is a wholly new idea. I mean,
I know. I just came up with it tonight as I realized that we do have all these things. Okay, go ahead.
So back to Measure EE, which was approved in November. So once it was approved, the Office of the City Clerk became appointed. What the measure didn't state was who would be the appointing authority. And that is because there's also a statute or state law that says when the charters when the voters approve such a change in the Office of the Clerk, the appointing authority goes to the City Council. But the City Council also has the option under that same statute to adopt an ordinance transferring the authority to appoint the City Clerk to the City Manager. And so in December of 2014, the previous elected City Clerk retired, and the City Council appointed Tina Knapp to be the acting City Clerk. So that's exercising that authority that you had once the Charter Amendment was moved. The Charter Amendment was approved to appoint a City Clerk. Then in January of this year, the Council requested that I prepare a report on your options regarding the appointment of a permanent City Clerk. So it's a very simple matter at this point. The Council can either hold on to the authority that they already have, and if you would like to, you could direct the City Manager to begin a recruitment process to bring forth candidates for a permanent appointment. The other option is to direct me to return to you with an ordinance that you would consider at a later date, and the ordinance would, if adopted, transfer the appointing authority to the City Manager. So what we're asking for at this time is just direction from the Council as to how you'd like us to proceed in this matter.
Okay, I'd like to open it up for discussion. David? You're moving your microphone, and you're the only one moving, so.
I'm the only one that's going to discuss.
I don't know. Go ahead. Let's get started.
I would like to see the City Clerk report to the City Manager. I come from a discipline where there's a direct control,
I'm sorry, David, but.
And where there's no doubt who is in charge. And I'm concerned that if we advertise this as a position where we have 5 bosses, I'm not sure what kind of a quality candidate that we would have apply. So, in my view, that would be the most judicious way to run the city, and that is with a clerk reporting to the City Manager.
Okay. Gary?
Okay. I guess one of the things, David, is that right now the City Manager has 5 bosses. I see it, what I like to see is have us continue to have 3 independent organizations, a City Manager, a City Clerk, and a City Attorney. Right now in Orange County, it's approximately 50% on who the City Clerk reports to, whether it's a City Council or a City Manager. We need, in my opinion, we need an independent. I think the people were thinking they were going to get an independent City Clerk, and I think that we need to have an independent City Clerk to serve the people, the staff, and the City Council. I think when the voters voted, they thought that they were getting the City Council, and it wasn't really clear to them, unless you read all the words, that there was the possibility that the City Manager could in fact be the appointing party. The City Manager, the city manager, as well as other organizations like OCTA, where I'm at, and they have a CEO, they expect loyalty from their employees, and therefore, I would like to see somebody that doesn't have to have that loyalty. I can understand a city manager wants loyalty. I can understand why a CEO wants loyalty, but I want a person that's independent myself. One of the things that I brought forth today, which I can pass down, is that, in my opinion, if you could put that one item I have up there up, the city charter says that if the city manager has somebody reporting to them, that the city council can really only ask questions, inquiries of that person. We cannot. Not that we ever direct them, but we can't have the dialogue that we need sometimes with the city clerk. I mean, I had dialogue with the previous city clerk. That's why we have streaming of the council meetings now, because I had discussions with her. In the previous times, I had an issue with the city manager, and he wouldn't provide information on the pavement management plan. And I ultimately went to the city clerk, and I got the information. And in fact, there was a reason I didn't get it, because some of my streets have been upgraded, even though they weren't upgraded. But the point is, I think we need an independent city clerk so that there's no question. I'd like to see a separate department. I'd like to have the person report to the city clerk, and we can redivide the work, make sure it's redivided so that the organization is fully functional and working. I just think that there's too much complication by. Well, let's put it this way. There's a better chance for independence. There's another set of ears here at the City Hall for us to get feedback from. I got feedback from Linda that I wouldn't have got from a staff member. So I just think it's better to have separate entities, again, the three entities. So I would like to see us have the City Council appoint or hire a city clerk.
Councilman Garapapa?
I'd like to just inquire about the process a little bit, Mr. Flower, if you can just kind of go over what that entails as far as, interview process. Is it something that the council would do, and how the day-to-day operations would go, and just kind of elaborate a little bit on that?
So if the council decides to reserve that appointing authority, I think the staff would still be involved in developing the recruitment process. We haven't talked about what the details would be, but I imagine it would be a process that would hopefully produce a number of candidates for the council to eventually interview before appointing. So that's how that would likely go. The only difference would be if Jill were to be granted the authority, she would probably conduct a very similar recruitment, but she would be the one to make the final call on who the city clerk would be.
So what about day-to-day operations as far as administration duties, or I don't know about disciplinary actions and all that? How would that operate as far as council versus the city manager?
Under the city manager, the appointment, it would be pretty clear that she would fully supervise the clerk in her duties and be subject to Jill's review, personnel matters. If it were the council to appoint, I think it would be somewhat different. The day-to-day running of the office kind of goes through City Hall, and so in terms of budgeting and procurement and all that, that kind of gets executed through the city manager's office. But the clerk would have an independent right on reporting to you in terms of executing the clerk's duties. So there's kind of tension there, but it's really not that different than what we had with an elected city clerk. Elected city clerk was independent of the city manager, and managed her own office day to day.
Now, does the city clerk have a staff too, or how would that work?
I'll defer to Jill. I mean, we have a deputy city clerk. We have had at times, and they are an employee of the city, but they report to the clerk. Often, I think you can probably put that person in a kind of a double bind, having to report to the two.
So we have a part-time position in that office right now that actually, under an elected city clerk, reported to my office.
No further questions.
Councilwoman?
Some of you know that I spent the last 30 years in the public sector, and I used to sit down there where these people are. And I've worked, because I was a consultant, I worked in many cities. And having an elected city clerk is probably one of the most derisive methodology that I've experienced. She doesn't answer to anyone. And you have to recall that person. I said she, could be a he. That person has to have a recall if you don't like what they do. They're not there at the pleasure of either the city council or the city manager. That being said, in those 30 years, the most efficient form that I experienced is managed by the city manager. It's direct supervision. It's not the city council. If we were to supervise the city clerk, it would be very difficult. None of us are there all day. We come in, we go, we just, we do what we need to do, and we're gone. We don't see what the city clerk does all day. We don't know how she interacts with the public. We don't see her work product unless it's in an agenda. The only person who can see that is the city manager. And I think that that is by far the most professional and best method of appointing a city clerk. It has to be through the city manager. That's how I feel today. My position may modify, but I think at this point, that's how I feel about it. I think it's a city manager appointment.
Okay, having heard that, what I think I would like to propose is that we try a hybrid. And I've given it a lot of thought because when the city clerk was on the ballot, the main reason I was in favor and signed the arguments in favor of an appointed city clerk was to get the continuity in the org chart. So I understand what you're saying about the independent. So what I would like to do is see if we can't find a way to blend the two. So I would offer up two ideas that might help to blend both. One is that the recruitment could be run by the city manager, and then they could get them down to 2 or 3 candidates, bring it to the city council who would hire, and then the city manager would run it from there. Now, what does that do? What that does is the clerk is then hired by the council, so they know that's where their loyalty, that's who hired them, because there's always a loyalty that goes with the person who hires them. And they're also then managed by the city manager for the day-to-day. There's another model that we might choose, which would look very similar, except that the city manager would go ahead and hire and supervise the city clerk, but only as ratified by the city council. In other words, the city manager would do the final selection and bring it to the council, and the council would have the ratification for that. I think we need a hybrid in order to work efficiently, and I would like to still find a way to maintain the independence, and I think we can do that through the council being involved in the hiring. So,
can I ask a question of the
Sure.
attorney? This document I passed to you here, do you interpret that if we want something from the city clerk, we have to go to the city manager?
If you're speaking of records, I said no. You have no less right to public records than the members of the public.
No, I want more right than the public, thank you. I am representing a large group of people. If I want it, I want it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to wait 2 weeks for it. I mean, right now, if I want something, I used to call the city clerk, and I'd ask for it, and I would get it. Maybe not instantaneously, but I would get it. Now, if you put this into place, and I have to follow these rules of the city charter in my opinion, I have to go to the city manager. And for somebody that was falsely accused of directing staff, I'm very objectional to the whole process. I guess I need to release my documents so people can see what lies were said, so they understand what kind of lies went on in this organization. And so...
Mr. Miller, could you please...
I'm talking to the lawyer.
No, could I just ask you to...
No, you're interrupting.
Would you please refer it to which city manager you're talking about?
Sorry,
please?
Jill. City Manager Carmody, sorry. Thank you. Anyway, my point is, as I read this, I had this stuff down my throat. 406, I can give you a section, 406. I had it stuffed down my throat. Falsely, no merit. But I use the city clerk. I don't know about any other council person here. I ask more questions of the city manager because I get back more answers written than anybody else. That's been going on for 7 years. I go to the city clerk and I get information. Don't tell me about requests for...
Well, no.
I mean, I'm an elected official, and I won't stand for that. That's ridiculous. I mean, and if I want the information and the city's... I have confidence in Jill. So Jill's one thing, but what may be after Jill... Of course, she may be here for many years. I don't know, but I'm just saying I've experienced it. I know that you can end up in a bad situation, and you can correct it at the time, I suppose. Anyway, that's all.
If I may respond, I perhaps misunderstood the original point of your question. I thought you were saying that to get any record, you have to go through the city manager and couldn't go talk to the clerk. Now, this language of the charter includes this provision that says, except for purposes of inquiry, the city council is to deal through the city manager. Now, you can go and inquire of staff of information. You can inquire of the city clerk of information, and you don't have to go necessarily through Jill for that. This provision of the charter is about directing staff, and so that the city manager is free to manage the staff as she's been charged to do. So if you're just looking to get information from the clerk, there's nothing in this charter provision that I believe would prevent you from going directly to the city clerk, not necessarily having to go through the public records process, but directly to the city clerk to ask for information that you need to do your job. If I implied otherwise, I apologize. It was not my intent.
May I say, too, that if that's true, then I've been doing it all wrong, because I go directly to staff to get documents. I go to Sean when I need a document, and I go to Jim when I get a document. So if I maybe have been doing it all wrong, Steve, or am I okay then?
The charter provision says it limits contact except for the purpose of inquiry. So when you're inquiring of information from staff or the city clerk, that does not violate the charter provision.
What do you think, Gary?
I have no answer.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I have another comment. I would just like to know if we went with the first option, where the city council, chooses the city clerk and takes basically control of that. Now, what issues do we have if we want to change that later on, or vice versa, if we were going to go?
So you can. The government code allows you to change the appointment process by ordinance, so it's simply a matter of adopting another ordinance. So right now, you don't have to do anything to have the appointing authority. You have the appointing authority. In order to change that status quo, you would need to adopt an ordinance. And an ordinance isn't before you tonight. I'd have to go back and draft it, and we'd work out the details of the language and come back at a later date. That ordinance could always be superseded or rescinded by another ordinance. So if it wasn't working, if you felt like you needed more control over the city clerk's office, you could rescind that ordinance and be back to where you are right now.
Okay.
I have a question. For you, Steve, if we tonight maintain that appointment through the city council and then want the city clerk to then be hired by the city council but managed by the city manager, so that we get both the independence of hiring plus the management, so that we have a good org chart and we have a good reporting system and we have a good supervision system, does that require an ordinance, or can we approve that?
I don't know the precise answer to that question. I'd like some time to take a look at it if you could. I think that I know I've heard some cities have models like that. I don't have any direct experience with it, so I'd be interested in consulting perhaps other jurisdictions to see how they do it.
I was at Orange County Sanitation last week, and I talked to the clerk out there, and she was leaving, I think she was going to La Puente, I can't remember where she was going. And so I was very interested in the process that she had gone through, and she had been interviewed by the department heads, and then they gave 2 candidates up to the city council and the city manager, and that decision was made by that body as to who was going to be selected, and then she would be supervised by the city manager. So we're not the only ones struggling with how the best system would be. Well, what's your pleasure?
I'd still like to go on record as saying I think it's the cleanest way to have the clerk report to the city manager.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to move the motion.
If I may clarify, would that be a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance transferring the appointing authority to the city manager?
Yes. I'll second it.
Okay, please vote. Okay, so that's 2-3. I would like to make a substitute motion. I guess I don't have to call it a substitute motion. I'd like to make a new motion. I would like to make the motion that the city council be the hiring body for the city clerk, and that the city clerk would then be put into the org chart underneath the city manager. Do I have a second?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
may I ask for clarification? Because we don't have I don't have the language for you on that. So if it would be to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance along those lines or report back with...
Does that need to be an ordinance? I didn't think it needed to be, does it?
I'm sorry. Right, I'm sorry.
We're going to retain the appointing authority with the city council.
It does not necessarily require an ordinance.
All right,
Again,
and then...
you're proposing this hybrid model that I asked,
Right.
for time to study. So if you're going to...
So can I ask a question? How can we vote on a hybrid model? We haven't seen that.
That's the problem I'm pointing to.
So I'd like to see it.
So if you could give us time to, if that's the sense of the council and that you want to direct me to study that matter and report back, I can do so. That way you have clear language in front of you that describes what you're voting on.
Okay. Gary?
Yeah, I want to ask, if we create this hybrid, which doesn't match 406, how would you interpret 406 then? You'll look at that.
No, well, you still have that appointing authority. That gets into the tricky part of like the management of the day-to-day versus the appointing authority, I think. But I still would maintain that you're going to the city clerk for purposes of inquiry. You're not going there to direct her to do this or do that necessarily. You weren't with an elected city clerk. You didn't have the authority to direct the elected city clerk to do anything, but you were allowed to go for purposes of inquiry. That doesn't change.
But I guess I consider when you request certain items, you're asking for her to do, or her or him to do certain work, which is more than an inquiry.
I would say not necessarily. I mean, there's a difference between giving an order to a staff member, you need to go do this right now, in terms of you need to go fix that pothole, or you need to go, you can inquire about, activities that are going on with staff or information that they have regarding city matters. Same thing with the city clerk. You could ask the city clerk for information that she has, which are the official documents of the city. I don't see it as things in a way to distinguish the difference here. I think the charter is supposed to allow you to contact staff, and it would be the city clerk for the purposes of getting information that you need to do your job.
I guess the only difference is it's the independence part of it, where if you requested before, yes, the city clerk could decide yes or no, I suppose, because that was their independence. But now the city manager can decide yes or no. So.
On what?
I don't know.
I mean, like if you ask for a document?
Whatever you ask for. I mean, before, if you asked Linda could say yes or no. And now it's just the city manager can say yes or no, that's all.
Then your argument is not with the city clerk, it's with the city manager, and you always have the appointing authority of the city manager.
All right, so what I'd like to do then is make a motion that the city attorney would bring back to us the proper language in order to make the council the hiring body and the city manager the supervising authority. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Just for discussion purposes.
Okay, so any discussion?
Yes, I still think it would be ambiguous to have the hybrid method. And the fact we've already voted for the clean method, the city manager supervises the city clerk.
Well, I definitely want the city manager to supervise the city clerk in order to make it efficient. So I'm just trying to blend the two so that we can reach the both. So,
let me say this. The city clerk, well, the position has evolved over years, but basically they're the keeper of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are already done, they're keeper of the records. So what would the city clerk keep from me when I ask her for something? If I want a staff report from 3 years ago talking about whatever it is, why would she say I can't have it when that is
well,
her
I think that's Mr. Miller's issue, and what I am having trouble with is in order to promote transparency, we've put everything out on the computer, and the clerk doesn't have to get a lot of things. So I don't know, Gary, you're the one that had the problem with it, so why don't you?
Can I say something, please? I think it's always worst case scenario. It's not Mr. Miller or yourself. It's our public that sometimes inquires that doesn't have not just the authority but the presence that one of us may have. So I think that's the issue. It's not what you can get or what he can get or what I can get. I mean, that's an issue too. But I think, the easeability of getting information shouldn't have to, be you or me asking for it. If the public wants it and it's out there, they shouldn't have a problem getting it. And that's the ease of use. If Mr. Miller is having a hard time getting information, how difficult do you think it would be for the public to get information? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that's the case now, but obviously he has experienced that in the past. I think that's what he's trying to express, that worst case scenario, it's a different situation. So I think that's what you have to look at. And I think the option that we have now hasn't even been tried to even say it's a good, bad, or different. So why not try it? I mean, the voters gave it to the council. Why are we giving it away immediately? Why don't we try it out? And if it works well, then we can, massage it later. But why are we in such a rush to do it right now? It's already written that we have the authority. And that would be my only point.
Okay, well, given that, then, I think our best bet is to continue it. And what that does, if we continue it, is it retains the authority with us, and we can revisit it another day, and the attorney can research it.
I think it's always open. It's not like we closed the book on this.
Well, we never close the book. Anything we do, we can redo. So, yeah. So how about we continue it for further study?
Okay.
Okay?
Does that mean the previous motion that was passed is negated?
It failed.
Well,
it failed.
I think we still have to move forward to hire a permanent city clerk, don't we? Don't we want to do that?
Well, I don't want to do that without all the information.
All right.
And if the city attorney doesn't have all the information.
I just need the one job.
If there's more
You
information.
just need the one job. Yeah. Because I feel very strongly that I think that the clerk needs to be supervised. I mean, I don't mind doing the hiring, but I don't want to be down here at 8 in the morning to see if the city clerk's in.
That might be the case, but tomorrow it might be different, and that's all I'm saying.
And we always have that option.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to do a date certain?
How long do you need, Steve?
I'd like, a month would be nice. Give you a chance to talk to some other people who work with other cities and find out how their model is arranged. I also think maybe that would give us a chance to, along with the city manager, give you some idea of what your recruitment options would be depending on how we proceed. I know that you, Councilmember Garapapa, had concerns there. I think it was going to bear on your ultimate decision here. So I didn't have that information. I was just asked to bring back this topic for initial discussion. So if I got a month, I think we could come back if the city manager agrees.
All right. Do we all agree?
I just have one question for you.
Yes.
Why do you think you need to supervise the city clerk and you don't need to supervise the city manager? I mean, they were independent. That was the idea.
I think that without, I found that when I went to the city clerk's office and there was no one there, and there was no one there that knew what was there, and I went on several occasions and was unable to get what I needed, I want to make sure there's redundancy built in, that there's a supervisor I can go to that can tell me, oh, well, so-and-so can answer your question. A supervisor might have a key to a file that wasn't available. I think that the public needs that as well. Fridays may be the city clerk's day off, but if the public has Friday off and they want to go in and get a document, they should be able to go in and get a document. Under the old system, when there was no supervision, there was no one with the key to the file. And that's why I believe that.
One of the I don't know I don't remember exactly when you came on, but we used to have an fully qualified assistant city clerk.
Mm-hmm.
She quit, and we never went back with a fully qualified, assistant city clerk, or we never got to that point. So at one time we had a department, although again it was kind of a mess because the city manager had control of the assistant city clerk. It was kind of I don't even know how that ever happened, but
that's why I want a good org chart.
That's how it was.
I want a good org chart. I want people to know who they report to. I want the vacations that are worked out together. I want a city hall that's functional 5 days a week, not 4. And I think the best way to do that is to have the city manager do that. I feel very strongly about that. And I have not changed any position. This is when I talk to people about why I wanted an appointed clerk, it's because I wanted a consistent org chart. And that's what I want to see.
When we had an assistant city clerk, we didn't have a problem that I know of.
Okay.
So.
Well, I don't know. I just know the problem that I ran into when you had a city clerk who was on her own out there without supervision and could come and go whenever they wanted. There was nobody there then when you needed somebody if they were gone.
I think that the problem is when you took the staff away from the city clerk, you can't have a backup.
Well, there's a deputy in there now. I don't know why the deputy.
Not a deputy. Do we have a deputy clerk now?
It's an interim office assistant, part-time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a real, Anita, and I can't tell you her last name, but we had a real deputy clerk.
I
She was
remember.
as qualified as the
yes,
clerk.
she left. Yes, I know. I remember.
And so we had a functioning thing. When one was off, the other was here. So.
Okay. So anyway, that's why.
I just
that's
wanted
my
to thank
feeling.
you.
That's my feeling. Yes. Okay. So shall we continue it then and get some more study on it, and then we'll bring it back. At this point, I am definitely in favor of a hybrid, so we could try both, so that the city clerk, should she run into trouble with the city manager, knows that she can go to the council who hired her, and that would help maintain the independence. So, okay, we're good? Okay. All right, then we will move on and...
Can we take a 5-minute break, please?
Yes, you may. Hi, Ruth. You're the only one left. Hi, Charles. Okay, let's come back to order. We are moving on now to the consent calendar. Now, this sounds really odd, but I can't remember. Do I do the pulled first and then vote, or do I vote and then do the pulled?
I think by custom, we usually vote on the non-pulled items, the consent calendar, and then take the
Okay.
items and pulled.
Do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar as amended?
So moved.
Please vote.
Second.
Okay, that's 5-0 to accept the consent calendar. All right, now we're going to take the items that have been pulled off of it, and the first item has been pulled by Councilman Miller. It is item F, the fiscal year 2015-16 fleet replacement. Do we have a staff report?
Could we let it slide to let the accounting people go first so she can go home?
Is it going to be long?
I don't know. It's going to be long.
You want to go first? Yeah. All right, you want to reorder the agenda?
Please.
Yeah, okay. We probably should have done that before, Attorney. Are we
Yes.
okay?
I'm fine with it, because it's really 6 of one, half a dozen other. If you'd like to formalize it with a motion and a second, that'd be fine by me.
Okay, do I have a motion that will put G before F?
Please, I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, please vote. That's 5-0, so we'll have the CAFR first.
Okay, Mayor, so what I'd like to do first, before we invite Debbie Harper, our auditor, to come forward, is turn it over to our Director of Finance, City Treasurer, Vicki Beatley, to introduce the item, and then Debbie Harper can come forward and address any questions that the council might have. Vicki?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, you have before you, for consideration of receive and file, the annual report for the City of Seal Beach for the year ended June 30th, 2014. A couple of things to note about this. Well, happy to report, and Debbie will affirm that everything went well. But there's 3 items in particular that we're looking at tonight, and that is the audit communication letter, the report on internal controls, and then the actual CAFR document itself, which is CAFR is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. These items were discussed and reviewed with the audit committee, which consists of the mayor and mayor pro tem. Earlier in the month of January. And now what I'd like to do is go ahead and have Debbie Harper come up to the podium to talk about those 3 items that I just mentioned. Debbie is the partner with the firm Lansall and Lungard, and she will be able to briefly describe the audit communication letter, the report on internal control, and then the opinion on the CAFR, and be available to answer any questions.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? Is this on? No?
Yeah. I think you're
You
good.
good? Okay. The first letter that Vicki presented was the audit communication letter, and we do that letter twice a year. One is in a planning stage, and this is the final conclusion of the audit. That's a general letter which goes over items outside the audit. It talks about any difficulties, any future GASBs coming out, which I did want to point that out in the letter. There isn't any findings or wasn't any difficulties to disclose, but there are future GASBs that I'm sure you guys are all aware of. The PERS pension GASB, which requires you to put your pension liability on your books next year. So that will be a big change for you. You're going to see the pension liability as a long-term debt, and that will be spread across all your funds, but mostly in the first statements, you'll see the government-wide, and then it'll hit any business-type activities. So that will be a big difference next year. I'm working closely with Vicki, CalPERS. We're at the mercy of CalPERS still. They haven't made that information available to us, which is difficult because we want to start working on that and testing that. So there'll be a lot more test work that us as auditors will have to do as far as like the statistical information in there. You'll see a lot of information saying how many employees are in there and what the liability is per employees. We're going to now be tasked with auditing that information. So we're working with CalPERS, and the entire accounting industry is actually working on that and how we're going to develop that. And we plan to see that coming from CalPERS. They promised in April to June. So that's our time frame that we're working at. And that was a big thing in the audit communication letter that I wanted to point out. The other 2 letters, one is, before I move on, any questions on that? We're good? Okay, the other letter is the report on internal control. Now, when you look at internal controls, that's just part of our planning stage. That isn't something that we're tasked to do. meaning when we do our planning to perform the audit, we're actually looking at the financial statements and we're trying to give you an opinion to say, can you rely on these numbers? And in doing that, we assess the internal controls of the city to give us comfort to directing us on what more to audit. So, for example, if you had very weak controls in payroll and nobody was supervising it, nobody was reviewing the documents, we would say, you know what, there's a weakness in internal controls, we're going to hit payroll a little bit more and really dig into those numbers and take a larger sample. So that's kind of the assessment of internal controls. Now, our obligation under auditing standards is if we find any weaknesses or we come across any items that we have to make adjustments to, we're required by our auditing standards to document those. And that's all part of what everyone likes to talk about because it's a big thing is transparency. That was part of the auditing standards that's changed in the last 4 years. So we do document that. You will see that in the report on internal control. We talked about 3 just journal entries, which always happened in history, but never was required to be reported in the letter. So now you will see those adjustments in the letter. We made an adjustment to grant receivable, just to record a grant receivable on the books. We made an adjustment to remove a revenue account that was recorded in this current year, but it should have been in prior year. So we found that in one of them. And then another entry was on insurance. So you have an insurance premium that you pay, and every year it fluctuates where you get a refund or you have an increased liability. Those amounts have been really small in the past, and a lot of times we pass on them. So you'll see an immaterial amount that we didn't record. It was material to your financial statements this year, so we recorded that to make sure it was trued up and your financial statements have that amount. Those are the only 3 items on your report on internal control that you will see. Any questions on that?
I have one question.
Okay.
Next year under the GASB, we are going to show the pension liability, and you said it's going to be going across all departments. Where is that now?
It's just a footnote. It's not anywhere.
It's a footnote. Now, what does that mean? It's a footnote, but it isn't anywhere. What does that mean?
So you will only see the cost that you pay in the current year. So whatever your pension expenditure was for the current year, so what CalPERS says, this is what you're required to contribute in the current year to continue with your funding policy, that expenditure has been recorded. The unfunded liability is just a footnote disclosure. It actually isn't reported on the financial statement itself.
Okay, can you talk about the unfunded, as far as our unfunded pension? Because, you know, this is something we talk about all the time, and I'm still not clear about what that exactly means. I understand it is different for everybody depending on how they interpret it. So what does that mean to me?
Okay, so the unfunded liability, your net pension liability is what we'll call it. It's a net pension liability. So net, you get your assets. So the assets, all the contributions you've paid to PERS as of right now, those are your assets. The liability meaning the promises that you've made to all the employees to pay their benefits. That's the liability, that promise to say that they get 2% at 50 or whatever that calculation amount is the liability. So the assets that you've already contributed, less the liabilities that have already been earned to date, net those together, and that's the liability that you will show on your books.
All right, I'm really glad that's going to be in that next year because I think it'll help to clarify some questions that I've had for years. So hopefully that'll all be easy to read.
I'll do a better presentation or a more intense presentation during the audit committee, and we can go over those line items and actually really dig into that pension liability.
That'd be great. Maybe what we could do is next year we could schedule it when we don't have much else on the agenda. That'd be great. That'll give you the
I
time.
have a quick question. I know the OC Register had an article. You probably saw that. I mean, are those numbers, are they reliable at all, or how does that?
I don't know
come
how they
into
got
effect?
those numbers already because I don't have them yet, and neither have PERS hasn't released them yet. So they're probably looking. The difference is if you look at your financial statements now, those amounts aren't actually GASB approved yet because the actuarial amounts are their actuarial determined assets and their actuarial determined liability. What GASB is changing is that you need to put it at market value. So you need to say, as of today, if you were going to sell all those assets that PERS has on the market, what's that value? And that's a very different value than what the PERS actuarial value is. So it actually might be a little bit more when we come to see it, because the market value is actually a lot less than what the PERS actuarial value of assets are. So you will see that big fluctuation.
Okay, that's good. I think that'll be a good change. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, well, thank you, and it's been really nice working with you. Do you want to say something else?
One more thing, your last letter, which is the most important letter.
Oh, sorry.
Is your
We're done.
In the CAFR, you'll see our audit opinion, which is the cleanest audit opinion you can get. It's the unmodified opinion, meaning there was no modifications to our opinion to say we think everything's good, except for we said we think everything is good and you can rely on these numbers of the CAFR.
Is that the highest rating you can get?
That is.
All right, so we received the highest rating that we can get, and I thank you very much. Any other questions?
And we're going to win that award, is that correct?
Yes, I guarantee you'll win that award.
Great. Okay, anything else? No? All right, Debbie, it's been great working with you, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Then let us move on now to item F, and Councilman Miller, you pulled this item.
Yeah.
Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, if I could, I'd like to call forward our Deputy Director of Public Works, Luis Estevez, who will present the item tonight, and he's got a presentation prepared for you, as well as he'll be available to address any questions you might have. Luis?
Good evening. Thank you, Joe. Good evening, Council. The item before you this evening is a request to replace a handful of vehicles and pieces of equipment as part of the 2015-2016 fleet. I'm sorry, 2015-2016 budget called this fleet purchase. Just a brief history. Back in 2012, the City Council adopted a fleet management plan that basically took a very comprehensive look at the city's fleet management efforts in terms of when vehicles are replaced, the workspace for the mechanic, and looked at financing mechanisms and such. And so just to provide a very brief history, in fiscal year 2012-13, 17 vehicles and pieces of equipment were replaced. The consultants who put the report together noted that there were 17 vehicles that were very past due their replacement date. So in that fiscal year, 17 were replaced. In 2013-14, only one piece of equipment was purchased and replaced. Last fiscal year, this current fiscal year, 5 vehicles were purchased. That request was taken to the City Council, I believe, in September, October of last year, and Council approved purchase orders for the purchase of those 5 vehicles. And then for the 2015-16 fiscal year, staff is recommending the replacement of 14 vehicles and pieces of equipment in this evening's proposal before you. Thanks.
Is that one of them, Luis?
No, not. And just to give you a brief outline of the fleet purchase process, typically January, February, the fleet is scored. We go through the fleet, we evaluate the condition of the fleet, and we come up with a list of recommended replacements that is presented to the council for its consideration. That's this item before you this evening. As part of the budget process, then between February and June, as the budget is being prepared, we start to identify replacement vehicles and equipment. We start obtaining cost estimates, budget level cost estimates for those purchases, and we include those costs in the annual budget. So a second time that item will go before the council as part of the normal annual budget adoption process. So council will see that again with dollar figures assigned to them. And then typically between July and September, staff obtains, assuming council approves funding in the budget for new vehicles and equipment. Typically in July and September, staff starts to obtain bids and cost proposals for new purchases, and later those purchases are then presented to the City Council for approval. So as part of this process, the City Council sees this fleet item 3 separate times, culminating typically September, October, when Council has approved in the past the purchase of new vehicles and equipment, and then also gives staff authorization to auction off the vehicles and equipment that are being replaced. As part of the fleet management report adopted in 2012, the consultants recommended that the City Council allocate $300,000 a year into the fleet replacement fund, and that has been ongoing. And so typically this is just another routine request for replacement of vehicles. So That concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions you may have.
And Mayor, if I could, if there's specific questions related to the vehicle replacement fund, then our finance director, Vicki, can address those as well.
My question is financial. We started with this fund was $2 million. Is that what we started with? When we initially funded the plan, did we fund it with $2 million?
I believe it was $3 million.
$3 million.
It was two.
It was $2 million.
Yeah, what was it? $2 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and right now it stands at about
$2.7
million. Okay, so I was just curious, how, this will probably take us below, or we'll be right around $2 million when we finish these purchases? Or we haven't even looked at the numbers yet, probably then.
Well, I don't have cost estimates yet, so it could be $2 million, 2.2, somewhere in there.
When we do all this, how many vehicles will still have not been replaced over the last 3 years? I don't know how many vehicles we have total.
We have approximately 105 or 6, I believe the number is, vehicles and pieces of equipment. So that's on-road vehicles, off-road equipment. Of those, I can't tell you right now what the future schedules hold for vehicle replacements. I can tell you, though, there's been a number of instances where we've decided that we could get extra mileage or use out of a particular piece of equipment or vehicle. So rather than replacing, we've deferred it a year or two out if we can get some more mileage out of it.
Yeah, I know. I was talking to Sean today, and he was telling me, because I saw, historically, the volunteer police would take the old vehicles, but the old vehicles are so old, they're not functioning.
They function, albeit very expensively. The vehicles that the volunteers are using are step-down patrol units. Those units are driven very, very hard, and I can tell you in the last 18 months we've spent probably $8,000 on repairs, keeping those 2 units on the road. On average, we get about $1,200 at auction for a recycled patrol unit. So it's costing more to keep them on the road than they're actually worth. So the alternative we looked at, and we discussed this with the police department, is purchasing potentially like a Kia Sportage, a vehicle that we just purchased for our water meter. It has a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. We could keep that on the road at least 10 years, 15 years, if not longer, maintained properly. And so we're looking at options where we could get much longer warranty periods.
Well, when I saw you were giving the police department volunteers new vehicles, I thought we must have all new vehicles for the police then.
Not all, but yeah, they're getting new vehicles. I believe.
Wouldn't we still be better to give the new vehicles to the police and take the? I mean, that's just coordination. It just seemed like you give the old vehicles still to the volunteers and give the most newest equipment to our police department.
The vehicles that the volunteers are driving are pretty well worn.
No, I mean the new ones. The 2 new ones you have listed for the volunteers.
Oh, those are not patrol vehicles. Those are regular passenger compact SUV.
Will they look like police cars?
No.
So we'll lose the benefit of a volunteer looking like they're a police car out there roaming.
Well, actually, it's really up to the chief and his staff how they want to upfit those vehicles in the future, if they want to leave them all white or paint them black and white. But they're not going to be a typical patrol unit.
What do you think of that, Chief? Captain? I mean, I'm just trying to say, a lot of times the public perceive the volunteers out there in the police vehicle as the police are out there monitoring. If you start driving around a Ford Focus that's blue, they'll never know.
Yeah, this discussion we've had to date, the vehicles will still be black and white. They still will have a light bar, amber light bar on the top. So it will be distinct as not as a regular police car, but it will still be black and white with police volunteers on the side with a light bar.
Good. That's a good idea. Okay, thanks.
Question. Luis, how many police cars, patrol cars are we replacing?
Let's see, I believe it is 2 patrol units.
Okay, so.
And 1 motorcycle unit.
Okay, and so what we have are 2 volunteer vehicles, and my question is, I understand that the ones that the volunteers are driving now need to go, but what about the ones that we're leaving from the police department? Are they not able to be then moved down for the volunteers?
They can, but the problem is that we're going to experience a lot of repair bills with those cars. There's also a cost to stepping the vehicle down. We have to take all of the police equipment out of the vehicle and refit it with civilian equipment like the amber light bar, So there's modifications and costs involved with stepping it down we have all the decals all have to be taken off. We have to put new decals on the cars, and those can get kind of expensive over time. And then it's mechanical issues. Those patrol units, like I said, get driven very, very hard. So on the face of it, it may be a good idea to step it down and save some money, but a year from now, we could end up with, a $2,500 repair bill for a transmission, which is common in patrol cars. Those transmissions do not last very long. And if the patrol car only gets $1,200 at auction, it doesn't make sense to spend $2,000 on a transmission rebuild when the car isn't worth barely half that much. So it's a sweet spot we're trying to find. But there is a cost involved with stepping it down to a civilian volunteer unit as well.
Okay, thank you.
If I understand it right, that's what you did before, though, right? Is that how you did it with the volunteers or not?
Typically, yes. Yeah.
But now, so what kind of cars are the volunteers getting? Because I think Councilman Miller's point was very well taken, because I know when I walk the kids to school that there's a volunteer there, and people don't know immediately if it's a police officer or a volunteer. And believe me, and I'm sure it makes a big difference.
It does.
The way people drive. So.
It does. In discussions with police services staff, we talked about the Kia Sportage, which is
like a little SUV.
It's a compact SUV. It's real small. It's easy for the volunteers to get in and out of as well.
Right.
But certainly upfit it and have it look.
I'm not familiar with fleet purchases, but I know when we buy cars, if we wait later in the year, they're a lot cheaper, Usually you go in December, you got to save a little bit of money. Is that the same with fleet, or is it just a totally different ball game when you purchase things like that?
It depends on the type of vehicle you're purchasing. We do for vehicles like a Kia Sportage, where we go to local dealerships and solicit bids. So we get bids from 3 different local Kia dealerships. But when it comes to like patrol cars or maintenance trucks and things like that, we typically buy it off the state CMAS bid list. We piggyback off of another agency's bid. When we purchased patrol units, we went off of the city of Sacramento's bid. They had a very large bid for new Ford Explorers, so we were able to piggyback off their contract.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, any more other questions? Because I have one more for Captain Olson. Captain Olson, since we know that the visibility is one of our best ways of deterring crime, do you feel that these new ones that we're getting for the volunteers will look enough like police cars that I don't want to say will fool the drivers, but they will appear to be police vehicles?
I think they will be distinct enough that they will draw people's attention. In fact, it may even be a little more high profile just based on the different type of vehicle. When they see it black and white, it will catch people's eyes. And it will have a distinct light bar on the top also.
And I know that some of our police vehicles now are actually SUVs and not the old Ford, what were they? The Crown Victorias, yeah. So I think people are used to looking more at an SUV as a police car. But I think this point is really well taken, that we want the visibility of the VIPs in the police-looking vehicles in order to deter crime in the neighborhoods. So that would be a major goal, I think, for the council.
And that's the discussions we've had. It's going to take a little bit of tweaking the paint job and the graphics, but it will look very similar to our current cars.
Okay, very good. All right. Any other questions? You have a motion?
Do we need a motion on this?
Yes, you are being asked to approve the replacement.
Okay, I make that motion.
Second.
Please vote. Okay, that's 5-0 to approve the fleet management purchase process. I think that brings us to adjournment, and our next city council meeting will be February 23rd, and it says here at 6 p.m. to meet in closed session if deemed necessary. Otherwise, we'll be here at 7. So with that, good night, and thank you all for coming.